Muhammad and Wal Muhammad Salawat. Brothers and sisters, we would like to begin the program with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Maryam Asaria.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا بني آدم خذوا زينتكم عند كل مسجد وكلوا واشربوا ولا تسرفوا إنه لا يحب المسرفين. قل من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده والطيبات من الرزق قل هي للذين آمنوا في الحياة الدنيا خالصة يوم القيامة كذلك نفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. قل إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير الحق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. ولكل أمة أجل فإذا جاء أجلهم لا يستأخرون ساعة ولا يستقدمون. يا بني آدم إما يأتينكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي فمن اتقى وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. والذين كذبوا بآياتنا واستكبروا عنها أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته أولئك ينالهم نصيبهم من الكتاب حتى إذا جاءتهم رسلنا يتوفونهم قالوا أين ما كنتم تدعون من دون الله قالوا ضلوا عنا وشهدوا على أنفسهم أنهم كانوا كافرين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. We'll now like to move on to the main part of the talk with a talk by Mohamed Ridha Hamid. Mohamed Ridha is a cybersecurity professional who is currently working at Sky, and he is also a FrontRunner ambassador for ASICS. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
There's some seats at the front if you want to take up these seats. I don't want to feel very lonely up here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Funny story, when Miqdad asked me to give this talk, in my mind I thought this was going to be about cybersecurity. Having worked in cybersecurity and it being my field, I was ready to come here, talk about password security, talk about how to stay safe online, the dangers of the dark web, and they told me, no, it's about running. And that's when it hit me, and I thought, you know what, maybe all this running that I've done, posting on Instagram, actually has inspired people or benefited people, and I didn't really think I'd be asked to talk about my running journey. So to start with, one thing that I've noticed with all runners that I speak to is everyone has a story. If you ever go out with runners, whether it's running with them, whether it's even speaking to them, they've all got their own why as to why they're running. So I thought, let me start my journey into becoming a front runner where I started. A bit about myself, introducing myself, a bit about my background. Both my parents are here, so they'll see themselves on the presentation. And then hopefully go into a bit more of the running, the community of running, and all the groups that exist. Let's see if this works. So, many of you will know, I'm starting here with Saddam Hussein. This is a picture of him, a portrait of him in the 1950s. You might ask yourself, why am I starting here? Well, it's pertinent to me because if I trace back my own background, both my father and my mother, this man was very influential in both their lives. It's a common story with many Iraqis that came here in the early 90s and in the late 90s, that this man impacted everyone's life in Iraq, arguably. When it comes to my father, he was imprisoned when he was a teenager. He was also tortured. Funny story, I say funny, but this is the irony. Whilst they were being tortured, a story that he recalls to me is that they were lined up and were electrocuted. And as they were waiting for that, they were all laughing because that was the only way they knew to deal with it. So when he was released from prison, I only found out years later by going to Iraq with him, he had to escape as a young teenager, 16, 17, left his family. He was tipped off by, I believe, his brother, and left at a young age and didn't see his family until many years later. And that's a kind of a quick overview of my father's escape from Iraq. And then he ended up eventually in Iran. With my mother on her side, she was from southern Iraq in Basra, or Basra, and she was, like many in that area and in Iraq, were kicked out. Her family were kicked out because their lineage came from Iran, and under that regime, that was the case, you were kicked out. So many thousands of families literally marched from Iraq into Iran, and they were forced out of their homes. Their homes were, that had to leave, pack. And until today, the ramifications of that exists, where some families are trying to reclaim their homes or find out where their homes are. So this man is influential, and I thought this was a good place to start the journey. So when I was born during the Iran-Iraq War. I was born in 1987, and the Iran-Iraq War, if you don't know, lasted about 8 years, from 1980 to 88. It's one of the bloodiest wars in the 20th century, or towards the end of the 20th century. And if you look at the numbers, just the numbers of people that died in that war, the estimate, according to a quick Google, says between 500,000 to 1 million. Now that jump from 500,000 to 1 million should just tell you how many more it could be. And that's estimate figures. And this picture here, for me, I thought was very pertinent, very symbolic of the war. Many young people lost their lives. This guy was called Hassan. His name was Hassan. He was 16 to 17. He perished in the war, and his remains were not found until 2017. And I was born during that war. And this is a picture of myself and my mum in Iran just before we came to the UK. And a story during the war, when I was born, and my mother tells me this, I was about 1 year old, and given the world today and the war that we're seeing in Palestine, when I was born and I was 1 year old, the bombs were falling in Tehran, and there was an incident which my mom recalls where she thought a bomb had fallen and the glass fell on me, and she came to the room and to her relief, it fell the other way. It didn't fall on me. So that is a bit of a background of where I was born and the period that I was born. It was a bloody period, war, parents fled from Iraq, and that was the kind of situation that I sort of came from. Fast forward, when they arrived to the UK, they literally, like many Iraqis, arrived not knowing much English. In fact, the only words that they knew was yes and no. So this, I imagine, was probably the scene in Heathrow Airport as they arrived. And I smiled, but this is how we deal with it. They arrived as refugees, so I came to this country as a refugee, and I'm proud of saying that. It's important that we know our roots and our heritage and how we came to this country. And for me, this was my journey here. One thing I wanted to mention also is my name. So my name is Mohamed Ridha. On my passport, it's Mohamed Hamid. So I've kind of grown up with two identities. At home and within the community, it's Ridha. At school, at university, at work, it's Mohamed or it's Mo. I'm kind of bring them together as Mohamed Ridha. And I don't know why my parents did that. Maybe they can answer that afterwards. Maybe I tell myself it might be a reflection or a impact of the war or of the fear of the Ba'ath Party that you give you two names. Nevertheless, I go with Mohamed Ridha or Mohammed or Mo or Ridha or whatever it is. That's, again, a reflection of the kind of background that I've come from. And I wanted to share this picture as well because it's, I think it's important. I mentioned Saddam Hussein in that picture of him in the 50s. When I grew up, like many Iraqis in Iraqi households, and especially expats in the UK, Iraq was painted to us as a kid like heaven, like this country that you'll never see again. And Saddam Hussein will forever be this tyrant. And if it's not him, it will be his kids. If it's not his kids, it will be his kids' kids. So we never thought that we'll ever see Iraq. The first time I went was in 2004. Absolutely amazing experience. And on this occasion, in this picture, you can see I was a bit chubby. This was 2009. This is on top of Saddam Hussein's palace in Babylon, in modern-day Hille. This is a man-made palace, which you can't really see from here. But what you can see is the ancient ruins of Babylon behind me. Saddam Hussein, in his infinite glory and wisdom, decided to rebuild the ancient ruins with new brick, and thereby ruining that site. It is a UNESCO protected site, but down there is the ancient city and the ruins of it. And when we were there, along with my peers, we reflected. We were like, we grew up, and our parents told us all these stories. We saw the war paint out on our TV screens, and now we're here. Like, this is the place that Saddam probably held parties, probably had his family here. And subhanAllah, like Allah's plan, we plan and he plans. Now the kids of those people that were exiled or escaped are now here, and Saddam is not here, and we're actually in his palace. The palace was looted, by the way. There's literally nothing there. And in the next slide, these are my pictures. So I took a picture of what was on the outside of the palace. And it's reflective of the man that he was. You can see himself here, there's some behind him, the people representing various factions of Iraqi society, from teachers, I'm assuming teacher, the guy carrying the book, people in the army, women, men, and you see him at the top with his hand up. And if that doesn't paint to you a person who is a dictator, a tyrant, then I don't know what does. There are other pictures that I took. I mean, across the whole palace, you had his initials painted, Saddam Hussein, across the whole palace, on every single brick. And this picture, again, making it quite personal, is my father outside his family home. It was built in 1906, I believe, and it was where he was born. So, the circle goes back. He left Iraq and then in the end came back, and this is his family house in Karbala. So, moving on, a bit about myself before I delve into this of the running part. Career-wise, as you have heard, I work in cybersecurity. Prior to that, I was a network engineer, working in various elements of networking. So I was at the Cabinet Office, and in my time there, I was there for about 11 years. The first 8 years were probably the most exciting part. Actually, all of you would have interacted with gov.uk. So the team that I was in built gov.uk. It was an exciting time. It was a bit like a tech startup in the heart of government. And exciting times. This is about 2012 onwards. And the whole ethos of that was to make it easier for the citizen to interact with government. So it was things like applying for a passport, applying for a driving license. So think of any service you might have interacted with. The idea was to make it simple, easy to find on gov.uk. And then moving to today, I'm now based at Sky. Sky is part of a larger family, which is owned by Comcast, who also own Universal and DreamWorks, amongst others. In that capacity, I look after the security elements of what sits in people's homes. So if you think of the broadband router at your home that you switch on, switch off, think of the TV box where you watch Sky on, all that needs to connect back to things and the box itself. So the security of that is what I sort of look after. So enough of that boring stuff, that introduction there. I thought, what was my first sort of dabbling in with some fitness-related activity? I've never really been a person who's been into their fitness. When I was young, I was a fat kid. And I think until today, I still sort of identify myself as a fat person. So I found this picture. Many of you will probably know. This is Mahfal Ali, the old school Mahfal Ali. This was the entrance that I remember vividly as a young kid, going in, going out. For those of you that don't know, I grew up in the Mahfal Ali community, in the Husseini Madrasa. I was there. And I remember going to the kitchen here, grabbing the Mahfal Ali Khoja tea and coming out and standing outside as the program was going on. And then in the other hall next to on my left, I remember the Quran classes that used to take place during Ramadan. But this picture here, this was the first sort of event that I got involved in. It was a charity event where we cycled from Haydari down in South London all the way to Mahfal Ali. Over here. And I had hired a very heavy bike. Everything was very slow. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I thought, let me just do it. But you can tell, if for the eagle-eyed, I'm wearing ASICS shoes. So I always wore ASICS shoes from day one, and I'm wearing it here. But the journey really started here. A lot of people think that when you run, you lose weight. I recently completed the marathon, so everyone was like, "Why do you still have a bit of a belly?" It's like, when you run, you don't lose weight. Running is not what makes you lose weight. It's your nutrition and your food. And coming from an Iraqi family, I only realized when I sort of became more aware of what we eat, just how bad, and I think it's the same with many Asian communities, our food can be. So this is a famous breakfast dish Iraqis have. It's called bagil bdihin, which literally translates to beans in oil. So, and if you've ever seen it be made, it's I think it's kava beans with egg and with pita bread and lots of lovely stuff. And at the end, they'll get the pan of oil and they'll put it all over the dish. So it's nice and oily. If you haven't had enough oil, get more oil. So for me, it epitomizes that our diet sometimes can be unhealthy. I'm not saying we shouldn't eat this. I'm just saying there should be some moderation. So for me, the journey started in just thinking about what I'm eating. So the first practical step that I'd done was to just reduce sugar. So in tea, I used to have like 2 or 3 sugars. For those that have been to Iraq, you might see that they have half the tea or half the thing is full of sugar. And if you don't have sugar, they'll question you, like, well, what's wrong with this guy? But anyway, that's where I started. And then slowly, I sort of moved on to being more mindful of what I'm eating. So in later years, 2019, I went on a meal prep program, lost over 10 kilos, but it was the food. So the exercise helped, but it was mainly the food. So I thought I'd try to put that in there as part of the journey as to the weight loss. It was the food and the exercise and the gym and sort of a supplement to that. First running event was 2015. This was the Vitality 10K, which is in central London. It's a 10K race. Again, a bit like the one where we ended up in Mahfal Ali. I just thought, let me just do this, let me go through it. And I remember at 6K, or was it 7K, I had to stop. So I was walking, I was looking around, I'm thinking, how on earth are these guys still running? And I was breathing out, I couldn't make it. At the time, my brother was a lot fitter than me, and so he ran it in about 50 minutes, and he was just zooming past me, and I did it in about 1 hour and 6 minutes. Again, you can see from my face, a lot fatter there. But the people behind me they're loving it. So I think common to a lot of people that probably started their running recently, COVID, the pandemic. That's when a lot of people that I know, and including myself, really got into running. Before, it was dabbling with it, running here and there. But if you remember the period where you couldn't do any exercise, like a lot of people and my peers, football was what we did. I played 2-3 times a week. When it came to the lockdown, it was quite stressful in terms of not being able to do any sort of exercise and not being able to play football. So the only thing we could do was run. When it came to that, it was a bit of a lonely journey. But what I want to touch upon is that there's a misconception that people think running is a solo sport, and it's an individual sport. Far from it. it's actually a massive community sport, and you'll see why. So in COVID, I put together this running league. I called it the Running League. We had about 26 people join, and every day, the idea was in the beginning, if you ran the fastest, you'd get certain points, but then we thought that wasn't very inclusive. So whoever ran the most would get points for that. So if you ran 5K, you'd get X points, 10K, X points. Funny story related to that, it then got very competitive. So that's what really put people together. So there were friends that I would never have thought would run, were messaging me on WhatsApp saying, Ridha or Mo, I want to run, add me to the group. I was like, okay, add you to the group. So every night I would update the spreadsheet, and you can probably tell my IT background, I'm creating these fancy pie charts, top 3 runners, and then we were all talking about spaces on the league, the Champions League spaces, top 4, the Europa League, 6th to 7th, and at the top was me and a chap called Zuhair, and the funny story is, there was this, Zuhair would just run. So for me, I remember on Sunday, I went out for a 21K run. I was happy with myself, felt good, got the points. I've got it in the bag. This week, the trophy's mine. Zuhair saw that, and he just went out for a run. And what he would do during the week would just see my runs and then go slightly longer. So for this week, he won. You wouldn't win any prizes, you just win a pat on the back. But the idea was, it created a community. We weren't physically together, we were all isolating, but virtually we were together through the form of the WhatsApp group, which still exists today. Shout out to that group, but it isn't very heavy. It isn't very active at all, actually. Some of the people no longer run, they've gone back to the gym or back to their football habits, but quite a few are still running. So that was sort of in the COVID period. And then I thought to myself, well, I'm doing all this running, I might as well start doing something useful with it, maybe giving back to the community. And so the first thing that came to mind was charity. And the idea was, in Ramadan, why don't we make it like a competition out of it? Raise money for charity for a good cause, but at the same time have a competition or have something that you can sort of aim towards. So myself and a friend, Musa, as you can see in this picture, we decided to challenge ourselves and run a total of 100 kilometers whilst fasting in the month of Ramadan. And it was challenging, but in the end we both managed to do it. And I must say, when I first started, I didn't think I would raise any sort of money. I thought, maybe £100, max 200, 300. But mashallah, by the end of the month, we had raised over £5,000 together. And, we donated towards the Heart Trust. But that's how it started. And it became a yearly thing. I say yearly, but only been 2-3 years. That when it came to Ramadan, we would do something challenging whilst fasting. And for me, that was kind of challenging the narrative as well. Growing up, and I think still till today, people associate Ramadan with the spiritual part, which they should do. But when it comes to the physical aspects, I'm seeing more and more people doing challenges during Ramadan. And it's a push between what your body can do and what your mind can take to do. Remember that, body and mind, because that'll be part of the theme next, soon. Community. So I was talking about community. So I then came across a group, and I have to give them a shout out, the Nov Way. So we run every Mondays, 7 p.m. outside Box Park, outside Wembley Stadium. And this community, I found them on Instagram. A few friends of mine told me, why don't you run in this community? For a long while, I didn't join them, but then I thought, maybe let me just, move the social anxiety to the side and then just do it. Why not? And what you find with many of these running communities is that they're very welcoming. Everyone is there for a common reason, which is just to run. And the spirit of Nov is to start the week with an easy run, a social run, get to know one another. And you'll see we're quite diverse, both in age, both in backgrounds. It was started up by a chap called Leon with his friends, and it's grown ever since through Instagram, through social media. This is just last week. We had about 50 people join us. And there are many activities that they organize, but the Monday runs were pivotal to me and helped me sort of expand within that wider community. And this is what I mean by running is a community activity, not a solo one. Related to that theme, I ran the Berlin Marathon with the SJ community. You might see some familiar faces in this picture. And this was us after Berlin Marathon. We just completed the Berlin Marathon, and alhamdulillah, I made good friends in that trip. And again, it emphasizes that spirit of community. You're not there alone, and it's powerful when you're running together. And of course, I can't not mention the Muslim runners. So for anyone that wants to get into running or might be inspired by it, know that there is a community behind it. And one of the biggest ones for Muslims is the Muslim runners. It's a WhatsApp group, but it's more than a WhatsApp group. But it is a WhatsApp group with people from all over the world, not just the UK. And when it comes to sort of the big major races, so in this example, London Marathon, we had people from the United States, UK, all over the UK, all over the world, getting together under the banner of Muslim runners. And this was a picture that we took in the expo. So if you ever do a marathon, one of the nice things about it is the expo that takes place, which is a few days before the actual marathon. You get to go meet people and grab your bib there. So all of us there have got our bib, excited for the race. And it's a good time to sort of see and meet others. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, everyone has a story. And then when you mingle here and speak to others, you sort of find out what their story is, why are they running, what's their why. And after this event here, we then went for a dinner and got to know each other a bit more. So you'll see the theme of community, and it continues. This was just a few weeks ago. This was, again, back to the theme of charity. The Hackney Half. It's a half marathon that takes place. And what you'll probably get is that in London, there's a thriving running community. There's a community for all areas of London. But especially when I run in central London. I see people in Battersea Park, Hyde Park, multiple communities. And you might say to yourself, well, is it just for young people? No. You'll see people in all ages. But one thing I sort of wanted to touch upon that helped me drive more towards running is the lack of representation. So there was a stat from a couple of years back, maybe 2021, London Marathon. Over 90% of people that ran that marathon were of a white background, and the rest were from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background. So that's really bad in terms of representation. I remember the early years races that I ran on, and even Hackney, this one here. You look at the names in the results list, and you see if just from the names there is a major lack of representation, and you question yourself and you ask, maybe within our communities running isn't really much of a activity. I think it's growing. I think this picture here shows it here, and the pictures that I've shown. But it remains one where we are majorly underrepresented. So the London Marathon is doing something about it. And this is why I say if you are inspired, I didn't mention this in the previous slide, but one of the benefits of being part of Muslim runners is that they get, not free, but they get community spaces for London Marathon. The London Marathon is, the tickets for that, or the spaces for London Marathon is like gold dust, because it's a major marathon. So in the running world, there are 6 majors. London Marathon is one of them. And so spaces to that are rare. You'll find stories of people who've tried to get into London Marathon and just haven't had spaces. They've had 10 attempts, 10 years, they'll get a space. But through these minority ethnic groups, we're getting community spaces. And that's because the organizers know and recognize that we need more representation. And the way to get that is to get more people to come running, engage them. So if you are inspired, I would really recommend joining Muslim runners and then perhaps applying for a ballot space, or even just getting involved in the community. I think one of the things I didn't really touch upon is that when I started running, it wasn't marathons. I wasn't doing marathons from the beginning. I mentioned I struggled in the 10K. At that moment when I did that 10K, I was doing hardly any running. I started slowly. You might have heard of the couch to 5K. This is how you should start. And because there's a story that I remember with my wife. She wanted to run in the COVID period, and she went out with her friend, and she came back, both of them red-faced, because they, in typical Arab, Iraqi fashion, tried to race each other. Even though I told them, just go out and enjoy it. You know, don't race each other. So this is just giving you a quick overview of what I am at home. Because I do so much running, I'm at home just talking about my running, and my wife is the black cat here. You know, me talking, and her just too much. Sometimes I have to tone it down with the running. But I'll quickly talk about some of the stats. Because I sort of enjoy my stats, this was just a quick overview of my 3 marathons that I've done. And you'll see in the yellow line with the London Marathon, it's quite a consistent line. And the theme I'm trying to show here is that improvement. So wherever you start, even if it's 1K, even if it's just walking is a majorly underrated exercise. Even if you do that, you know, that it's at least something. And for me, this kind of highlighted and showed the improvement in the marathon distance. Coming on to ASICS, for those of you that don't know, Anima Sana in Corpore Sano, I probably didn't say it properly, is the acronym for ASICS. And that's where the ASICS acronym comes from. It stands for a sound mind in a sound body. And this is one thing I really wanted to mention, is that I found that when I was running on my own, so this is when you're running on your own, in long distances, there are moments where you're running and you're just you to yourself. You're no longer listening to anything. So I want you to imagine this. You're running across the canal. You can hear the water. You can hear the birds. It's just you and just the silence. And I thought to myself, this is a form of meditation. You know, I'm just me with my thoughts. And then I thought to myself, isn't this what Salah is meant to be? I know Salah is coming up, but isn't that what Salah is meant to be? But the reality is, a lot of us, including myself, we quickly pray. It's a tick box exercise. We want to get it out of the way. So when I was running, I was like, this is a form of meditation as well. And that's when I sort of understood why ASICS chose this phrase, a sound mind in a sound body. So what I'm trying to get at is, running isn't just about that physical element. It's also about your mind. If you're feeling stressed at home, if you're feeling stressed with anything in life, just go out for a run, is what I would say. And so a bit more to finish off with the community, FrontRunner community, it's essentially you're a brand ambassador, but you're representing ASICS. There are about 700 of us across the world, across 33 countries, and in the UK, there's 9 of us specifically in London, 50 across the UK, and I'm one of those in the London community. To finish off, this was a picture in our my first ASICS community meet. So this was early this month, somewhere in Wales. And first time I met the community of ASICS, and again, from different backgrounds, different age groups. And this was us in a morning, sunrise morning. And it was a lovely meet-up, each with their own different stories. There was a night where we sat around the campfire. We all sort of talked to each other. And everyone brought something different to that day. And what I mentioned is also the theme that with the other groups is that they were all welcoming. So if you ever feel some anxiety about joining a group, I would say to yourself, you know, fight that. You try go to it once. If you want to come to the Monday group, more than happy to come join me on that group. And then you might find that you might actually enjoy it. And you might find that you might find a sound mind in a sound body. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohamed Ridha. We have some time for questions if anyone's got any from either side.
There's one there.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for sharing your journey. When it comes to your running journey, to what extent is goal setting important? Like, you know, we can go into running as just somewhere to get lost in. To what extent is goal setting important for you? Or has it been important for you?
That's actually a good point, which I didn't touch upon. Big. So the reason I say that, and way back when I started doing the charity work, that was a form of goal setting. So it reached a point where, I was running, but I needed to find some purpose in those runs. So the first thing was, setting some goals, setting a fundraising aspect to it. So when people were donating, for me that was an impetus to go out running. And then beyond that, it was, like you said, falling into that black hole of running. It was just signing up for events. And then slowly signing up for events, trying to improve the time. You'll find that it's a common thing with a lot of runners. But that goal setting is a key part of it. I continuously want to make sure there's something happening next. And that's part of what drives you going forward. One of the guys in this picture, because they all come from different abilities. He's done over 500 marathons. And one thing I didn't mention, I think they chose me because the application process is quite involved. I think worldwide there were over 27,000 applicants, 9,000 in the UK only. But they look at your sort of social media. And for me, I didn't want to reflect a picture of the individual in running. I wanted to reflect, and I still want to reflect, the community aspect, the group aspect of what running could be. But certainly goal setting was big for me. Any more comments, questions, whatever? Oh, there's one there.
Assalamu alaikum, thank you very much. My question is, in your journey, did you face any injuries and how did you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. I think probably the beginning was the hardest. I was a lot heavier and I used to get shin splints quite a lot, so pain in the front of my leg. The way I overcame that initially was a bit of patience and then using the cross trainer in the gym and then walking. So for a long while I would just make sure I was on the cross trainer. When I then stopped feeling the pain, after testing it a bit, I'd go back to the treadmill. So I started off as on treadmill running. Now I hate that, but in the beginning it was all treadmill running. And in switching between the two. That was at the beginning. London Marathon 2022, I sort of injured my knee, which wasn't really through running. I was just sitting down, and I think running played a part. And then I got up, and I just felt something in my knee. And then that was something that I sort of felt then. Injuries come and go. Even during this marathon that I done, I self-injured myself, very stupidly. But you have to teach yourself to listen to your body. It's a common thing to say, and I know it's common sense. Everyone says that, but it's true. You listen to your body, play around with the pain that you do feel. If it's too much, I always sort of put a scale 1 to 10, and that will determine whether I go out for a run or I say no. You know what? Let's rest it a bit. We had the benefit of technology as well. So this watch just before I came up on the talk gave me a notification, which gives me anxiety sometimes. It said, "Oh, you've had an easy day. Consider doing some yoga." I was like, okay, I might go to the gym after this. Who knows? But yes, no worries.
Sorry, I came a bit late, so thank you for. I'm sure the journey is interesting, but just one thing I wanted to ask you: have you tried the foot-shaped shoes? And do you recommend that?
Oh, those foot-shaped shoes.
Yeah.
That's a can of worms. So shoes is a very personal thing. I'll start off with that. Everyone has their own personal journey with the shoes. I haven't tried them specifically.
Okay.
My friend has, and he raves about them. He runs marathons in them. But shoes choices are very personal. So I'll quickly say with me, I chose the wrong shoes in the beginning because my feet are fairly low arched. I chose a shoe that's for high arch. So it was digging into my foot. So at the very beginning, I hated running because of that. And that's why, if you want to start to go into running, do a gait analysis. There's a shop in Pinner, very good for that. And they'll sort of help you choose the right shoe for you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No worries.
It's very interesting. Thank you very much for sharing the journey. So I did last year as well. Started from zero, and alhamdulillah managed to
Yeah, the
do
journey's
it.
amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the question I ask is, I find it very difficult to run alone. Like if it's with a group, I find it's very interesting because you just keep chatting, and there's always someone push you. But if you run alone, I find it gets quite boring, especially if you run for long distances. So I don't know how would you overcome this? And the other questions as well is about how the influence of the other garments like help you in terms of the shoes, the watch. And other things.
On the group running, I have to concur. It is difficult to run alone. When I was running in the beginning, I was doing runs by myself. The maximum I'd probably do 28 kilometers alone. You get bored, it's true. But I always emphasize on the power of group running. So when it came to London Marathon, the bulk of the training period was during Ramadan. So I think the highest distance was 34 kilometers. And I told myself I'm going to do it whilst fasting. And everyone's like, oh, you're crazy, you do it after fasting. I said, no, I'm doing it whilst fasting. So I continued doing it with the group. Because you're with the group, you just don't notice about anything else. And that's why it's the power of the mind. 34K and 32K during the early mornings of Ramadan, was able to do it whilst being in the group. Running by yourself, the only practical thing I could say is if you have to run by yourself, podcasts, because they can be quite long, and if they're interesting, find an interesting podcast. I work in cybersecurity. There's one that I really love called Darknet Diaries. It's accessible for anyone if you're interested in the dark web and all that kind of stuff. Good podcast to listen to. They're about an hour long. So that's one way. The other question was about garments. Learning curve, as with anything, it's a learning curve. So I sort of ask people, this is the other thing about groups, you can feed off each other's expertise and what they've learned. There's someone in the group that always tells me, oh, have you done this, have you done that? The Berlin group that I was with, as you saw, you can tell we were all runners because we spent the majority of the time there just talking about your pace, what time do you want to get, what shoes are you going to wear, how many gels are you going to carry. So that's another benefit there. So again, learning journey with what I wear.
I think we'll end there. Thank you very much. Just a quick announcement, a reminder, on the 5th of June, that's this Wednesday, we will be hosting our general election hustings with the parliamentary candidates for our local constituency, Harrow West. So we'll have Gareth Thomas representing the Labour Party, Abbas Morali representing the Conservative Party, and Pamela Fitzpatrick, who's standing as an independent candidate. We will be opening doors at 7 p.m. with the aim of starting the programme at 7:25 sharp and ending at 9 p.m. We'll be discussing economy, public services, including health and education, immigration, hate crime, security and foreign policy. And there will also be opportunities for questions from the floor, so be sure not to miss out on this incredible opportunity. We have also been requested to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhum Dr. Jasim Al-Jawad, who passed away on the 29th of May. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha. We've still got some time before Maghrib, so feel free to.